Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today for our 30 on Thursday webinar, How to Leverage Microsoft SharePoint to Manage Your Audit Program. Just a little bit about Protiviti before we get started. We are a global consulting firm that helps companies solve problems in finance, technology, governance, risk, and internal audit. We were recently awarded one of the best 100 companies to work for by Fortune magazine. We are located in over 70 offices in over 20 countries around the world. Our 30 on Thursday webinar series is a bi-weekly 30-minute webinar series where we talk all things SharePoint and enterprise content management. Our next webinar will be on August 11th. You can register for this webinar and see our full schedule on our website, ecm.protiviti.com. We are offering free 1-hour introductory consultations today for everyone on the call for our on-demand SharePoint support offering. Our on-demand SharePoint support team performs performance troubleshooting, system health checks, Nintex workflows, and more. If you're interested in scheduling a 1-hour free consultation, you can schedule today by emailing us at ecm@protiviti.com. We are doing live tweeting today during the presentation. Please tweet us your questions and feedback at ProtivitiECM and use the hashtag 30TAudit. Today's session is being recorded. The recording of today's session will be on our YouTube channel along with an archive of all of our past sessions. For questions during today's presentation, please use the question window in the GoToMeeting toolbar, or you can tweet us your questions using the hashtag 30TAudit. We will save all your questions until after the presentation. Today's presenters are James Ensminger, Director here at Protiviti, and Terry Simpson, Senior Manager here at Protiviti. And I will turn it over to them and they can take it from here.
Great, Julie. So we're going to kick off today's presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about internal audit and SharePoint and the use of SharePoint within the platform there. And the first 3 slides that we're going to get into right now talk a little bit about surveys that we've looked at, and then in particular the one that you're looking at right now talks a little bit about internal audit groups and the use of some type of electronic technology. And one of the things that you'll see in here is that 77% or 80% of the participants, that's North American-wise, use some type of technology for their internal audit, whether it's Excel, an off-the-shelf type of solution, or even something like SharePoint that we're using today. The other interesting thing in the survey that you're looking at right here is that over 45% of the folks feel that the solution really doesn't provide the value that they're trying to get out of that solution, whether it does a tremendous amount of stuff and they only need a little bit, but overall they're just not getting the value as far as the dollars that they're spending on that particular solution that they have.
And when we look at how organizations are using internal audit platforms, generally they're categorized across the different sections you see here in IA risk assessment, planning, scheduling, electronic work papers, and so forth. And I think the key thing here that we're finding is that there's a variety of use cases that are deployed in internal audit platforms. Many of the off-the-shelf products do support a good majority of these, if not all of them. But the key is that organizations are not using all of them, and/or they have different needs within there. So I think in this particular study from the IAA back in 2015, electronic work papers was certainly the leader, and I think we would see that trend continues with our client base. We've had an opportunity to speak with a number of organizations at recent CPE days and found that, again, electronic work papers and also issue management seems to be the leading contender here. As we look at some of the growth and where things have changed from 2006 to 2015, 2 key things kind of stand out on this slide as well as our research that we've had independently. First is data mining. Organizations are looking to have increased access to data and monitor that data across their organization to help drive more efficiency and sustainability within the internal audit program. And the second kind of aligns to that is the continuous real-time auditing. Certainly we're seeing continued trend across other areas, but the biggest jump is really that data mining piece, and followed by that continuous real-time monitoring. And I think the key there, again, is organizations are looking to have deeper alignment and visibility across the enterprise with especially the systems that they have that they're monitoring or testing. And this really gets to when Protiviti helps organizations look at GRC technology, we come about it from a couple different perspectives. Certainly Protiviti offers an off-the-shelf product, the Protiviti Governance Portal, and we'll talk about that in just a moment very briefly. Other organizations offer off-the-shelf products that we implement and that other organizations have implemented on their own. But when we come about this, we say, well, what's right for an organization? Do they understand their requirements? Do they understand what their needs are in terms of, if they have technology already in-house that they can leverage? Are there certain use cases that they're looking to leverage? And we work with them to understand what's right for them. Is it buying an off-the-shelf product? Is it building something in perhaps a SharePoint technology? Or is it perhaps even leveraging a combination of the both, a blend of both off-the-shelf and building something, again, with a product like SharePoint?
In the next slide here, we're going to talk a little bit about our implementation capabilities. And at Protiviti, we have an off-the-shelf tool called the Protiviti Governance Portal that you'll see on the left-hand side. We've done a lot of these implementations using SharePoint, and you'll see it labeled here as a SharePoint Solution Accelerator. But we've also done a lot of third-party implementations as well. So in the event that a client chooses to go with an off-the-shelf platform, that's not the Protiviti one, could be Archer or some of the other ones that you see listed here. There are a lot of capabilities that we have that play into this, and I think this is a key thing to point out because we have a lot of experience around off-the-shelf tools and building a solution like James was talking about and leveraging the SharePoint platform for that. So I think it's kind of a unique skill set when you take the capabilities from the team of implementing third-party tools and solutions like SharePoint for this particular topic.
And just the key message there, certainly this is an educational format, so we wanted just to make sure that we made it clear that this is intended to be an agnostic session. Certainly SharePoint is the topic we're covering today, but it may not always be the right answer for organizations, and hopefully some of this information we'll share today will help you make that decision within your organization. And this is really a slide that covers that in a little bit more depth. When we talk to organizations about what's right for you, whether it's off-the-shelf, SharePoint, or a blend of the products, there are a couple of key decision factors there. And I think just highlighting a few of these, leveraging the existing technology footprint. The organizations that we're working with the most here in this solution space with SharePoint have already a vested interest to leverage their SharePoint platform. They've maybe had fatigue with off-the-shelf tools, and they're looking to use SharePoint as a fresh alternative for their organization. Another key point there is customized methodology. A lot of the organizations have a unique methodology. Certainly off-the-shelf products do offer a great degree of flexibility or configurability, but their requirements are perhaps so specific that off-the-shelf would be stretched thin and or require extensive implementation and customization costs on behalf of a third-party vendor. So SharePoint offers, again, a unique alternative to those situations. There are some cases, again, I wanted to mention that off-the-shelf maybe does offer some benefits for organizations. And really it's around the data model. Off-the-shelf platforms have a pretty fixed data model for them. So you look at a risk control matrix for those with an audit background when you're testing the risks and the controls and looking through the organization in your work papers. It's a pretty fixed data model. It does offer some degree of flexibility, but with that fixed data model provides a greater access to off-the-shelf reports. SharePoint has a really open data model, and we'll talk about some of the considerations in building that out with SharePoint. But the key there is with that increased flexibility with SharePoint, there's a little bit more thought that has to go into building out reports using SharePoint. Once you have the data model defined in SharePoint, certainly you can leverage Microsoft reporting capabilities if you're using in the cloud, Power BI, or on-premise DataZen and Power Pivot. So there's a lot of great reporting offerings within Microsoft SharePoint, but it does require a little bit more thought to get going there.
So for today's conversation, we really are focused on audit and how we're leveraging SharePoint within that particular solution. But I think the thing we're trying to communicate in this particular slide is that we also focus on a lot of other different solutions and industries. And so when you look at the slide here, you'll see some other areas that we have focused on using SharePoint when it comes to risk and compliance, internal audit, information technology consulting, a lot of other things that we get into where we look at these particular solutions and industries and we're finding places where we can get together kind of those solution accelerators and leverage really business functionality within the platform, whether it's third-party vendor onboarding or assessments. There's a lot of different areas that you can get into. So I think as we continue down this road with this particular PowerPoint presentation, there's a lot to think about with taking these different solutions and matching them up with features and functionality in SharePoint.
And that's really just building onto this slide. You know, Protiviti does have 3,500 individuals worldwide. We often benefit from the fact that we have deep subject matter expertise across these different solutions and these industries. It helps inform our build out of these solutions. And one key component of that, as you'll see at the bottom, is that solution guidance and expertise. I think what I'd like to also highlight is a key benefit that we've been leveraging, or solution I should say that we've been leveraging, is the Nintex platform. Many on this call are likely aware of Nintex workflow and forms. That's a core component of this offering, and we're going to go through how we're utilizing Nintex within this solution for internal audit. The reason we found a lot of success with Nintex is the fact that it's really a business user tool, something that the business team can modify the way that their internal audit platform or other solutions that we develop with them in the GRC space are utilized without requiring advanced technical and or IT resource for all those changes.
So the next slide here, and we've got this one and one more, and then we'll be on to the actual demonstration, which I'm assuming a lot of folks will be excited to see. But I wanted to tell a little bit about the framework and the architecture of the solution that we're going to demonstrate here in just a second. And so one of the things you'll notice on this particular slide is that we have created a site collection that is dedicated to this particular audit solution that we're going to show you. And what we've done is we've taken that site collection and we have saved a template for a subsite down here where you'll see that starting on the left. And what happens is as you flow through the audit, everything's contained within that individual subsite that we've created as a template. We leverage Nintex to do all the permissioning on this, so Nintex goes and creates the site when it's requested, it allocates the permissions, it does everything for us in order to create that for the audit team. There's also, as you progress through the audit in the three kind of piers that you see here, there are different phases, and we have separate pages as far as SharePoint is concerned for each of those phases. So we can talk about the planning phase on the left, the fieldwork phase in the middle, and then also the reporting phase over on the right-hand side. And we're literally leveraging a lot of just out-of-the-box capabilities so that when you look at the individual phases here, you'll see lists that we have on the left for risks and controls. And those lists have a many-to-many relationship so that you can relate those risks to those controls. And as we go into the center column there, when it comes to the fieldwork phase, we'll carry those controls forward and we'll proceed on to individual tests. And again, those controls have a many-to-many relationship to tests. And as you continue on into the reporting phase, you'll continue to see those relationships as you get into exceptions and observations and actions that need to be taken towards the end of that life cycle and how all of those relationships continue to go together. So we've taken this out-of-the-box capability of lists and libraries. We're connecting lists to create this relationship which brings everything together into this one nice solution. At the end of the day, what we've really built is an application. And the application is there for, in this particular example, an internal audit team and the framework to leverage. And that's really what we're focusing on, are the business needs of the internal audit group and how do we allow them to manage their audits within a SharePoint environment to meet those business objectives that they have every day.
And just a couple of more points to add on to this slide. I think the main thing we've found with organizations is that, you know, if they're using SharePoint right now for internal audit, it's likely a file repository. Maybe they're using it for a list of issues or tests that they're performing across the audits. But some of the key points that hopefully the group here will bring home to your teams internally are that, you know, if you build out a separate site collection for internal audit, each project is its own site, as Terry mentioned. The benefit of using SharePoint is you have the opportunity then to define how many phases are in that audit, example by each page here that you see. And then you also have the ability to define exactly what is contained on those phases. You see that you have your planning phase, your fieldwork phase, your reporting phase, but it could be, again, a number of different phases there and a number of different items that you have on those. Another key point to bring home is that you can have relationships across those objects, as Terry mentioned, and we're doing that through simple joins in the application, and you'll see some of the Nintex workflow that manages those joins and links across the data sets there. Just wanted to highlight a couple of quick examples as to why we're seeing clients using SharePoint and real specific case studies in this case. The first one here, the organization already had access to a GRC platform within their organization. They chose to go down the internal audit path with SharePoint because they didn't have an opportunity to invest in a new technology, and the technology that they had access to did not really meet the mark of what their needs were. And frankly, that other technology that they had access to was already deployed within their IT group, and the IT group really governed how that tool was used. So this gave them the opportunity to go off on their own with a technology platform they already had in place. That organization is also integrating with risk management. So again, the opportunity there is you can integrate across different disciplines and assurance functions, such as internal audit, risk management, and so forth. The next one there, I think the key point I wanted to mention here is this particular organization actually did not have access to SharePoint very readily. They had SharePoint 2007 in their organization, and as many on this call realize, it doesn't offer as much flexibility that you would find in 2010 or even 2013 and beyond. And so the internal audit group actually licensed 365 on their own. They had then the opportunity to go out and pay for 365 for the internal audit team alone, and then they really managed that environment on the cloud and implemented an internal audit platform there. And the third one that you're seeing there is another example on the cloud. The organization already had access to 365. The internal audit team just wanted to jump onto that environment. That group actually had gone through an extensive review of off-the-shelf platforms, and their requirements were quite extensive in terms of their need to pull down library data that's a set of risks and controls and documents and tests that was very, very specific to the type of audits they were performing. Now, off-the-shelf tools do offer an ability to have library data, but the ability to use SharePoint provided them increased flexibility into how that data would be managed and treated as it was incorporated. So just a couple of more specific examples, and hopefully you'll see some more of those relevant points come out in the actual demonstration. So what we've done here is we've jumped over to a generic demonstration environment where you have a couple of things I'd like to highlight here, and we'll just spend 5 or 10 minutes walking through this. First of all, what we found is that, again, that organizations, when they use SharePoint, don't want it necessarily to feel like a SharePoint environment. They want it to feel like an application that would be similar to an off-the-shelf GRC or internal audit platform. So when they log into the home page, they want to see some graphical summary dashboards showing them, again, where they're at in their audit timeline, what's open, what's closed across the various different projects that are open. Another thing that you'll notice is that you do have access to tabular navigation up at the top of the page here, so you can jump into various different aspects of the audit, and we'll go into a few of these in just a moment. I'll turn my head onto more of the technical side for those that are interested here. What this is using charts.js. We've had other success with clients using DataZen again for their reporting locally or on this cloud. They're using Power BI. But again, this is just simply charts.js, and there's some very good charting tools out there that are very low cost, if not no cost, to leverage the application there. Down below here we have a list of audits. This is just a list in the system, and we're building out our individual audits. What you'll find that as you build a new audit in your record here, in your register, the application will go through and ask you what information you want to capture. This is an Nintex form, so some basic styling has been deployed here. And you'll notice that we have the idea of cascading dropdowns, and we'll show some of that a little bit later. But for instance, I cannot choose a cycle code until I choose a cycle code initially, then I can choose a subcode down below. At the bottom of the page here, you'll see that I have the opportunity to create the audit. And by checking that Create the Audit site, what will happen is the Nintex workflow will kick off and ask audit management if they approve that audit from being initiated. Now, audit management does not have to log into the tool to approve that task. Using the concept of lazy approval, the audit management can simply respond to that email with that they approve the audit, and all of the workflow that Terry mentioned will go off into its process. I did cover these tabs up above, and we'll come back to them at the end of the session. But before I do that, I'd like to just jump into a particular audit here. We'll go into one of our audits. This is a sub-site, as Terry mentioned, within that site collection. And a couple things you'll notice here is, we have some basic metadata about that audit. This is being pulled from that list that I had just demonstrated previously in that previous page. And then down below here, I have a link to each of the different phases, the planning, the field work, and the reporting. And then on the right, we've introduced some more of those charts.js reports to show the tests across the audit, how many review comments we have across the audit, and then any action plans as well. A couple of things here to highlight that are offered within using the SharePoint platform, we've had more difficulty in off-the-shelf products. Again, the flexibility in terms of the layout that you want to have here, the charts that you want to have here, and really all the metadata that you're capturing can very easily be defined quite quickly within the SharePoint environment. And also you have the integration to Active Directory for those that are using Link or Communicator. You can start to identify what team members are on the audit and start to message them directly from this page. Now, we covered the 3 different phases in that PowerPoint slide before. We had planning, fieldwork, and reporting. Again, that's completely configurable with SharePoint, but let's just jump up here to, we can navigate at the top to any one of those phases and also down below. I'll go in the planning phase and highlight just a couple of things in that particular page. So what I've done from a technical perspective is I've gone from that home page of the internal audit and jumped into one of my sub-pages that would be the planning page. A couple tricks, hopefully it helps the group. We've kept the navigation up at the top so you can always jump around within the audit. You don't have to go back out to the home and then come to the fieldwork phase. So you can kind of jump around the audit, and that's just a simple navigation across the pages that you can leverage if looking to do this at home. And then you'll see some light customization in the list. And what I mean by that is I talked before about the fact that there is a many-to-many relationship of risks and controls. We have a risk list, we have a controls list, and we have a link risk and control list. So jumping more to the technical side here, I'm going to jump over to my site contents, and I will just highlight that here. We have the risk list, we have the controls list, and then we have the link controls to risk list. And you'll notice that there are quite a few other link lists here as well. The business users don't even need to know that there are those link lists behind the scenes. All they know is that they're building data in their audit, they're adding new risks, they're adding new controls, either on a manual input or through a library import, and then they're going into their individual controls. This is an out-of-the-box Nintex form that you're about to see, and we have the information about our control in the top half, and then down below we start to see what are the related risks and controls. Using some very light JavaScript, we're able to create new connections to related risks and remove connections as well. We can add a new test or add a new risk on the fly or add a new test that's already been created. So I'm going to go ahead and link all of these tests here, and we'll click Link Test, and that will build those connections. Again, this is kind of the interesting piece that a lot of organizations struggle with, and again, using some basic scripting and the concept of the link list, you're able to build those relationships out here. Another thing I'd like to highlight is the benefit of using the Nintex form is it's very easy to create dynamic fields. So if I say that this is a SOX control, that will automatically display one or many additional fields on the form. And that flexibility is there. That often isn't the case with off-the-shelf products. With off-the-shelf products, you really have a form that's leveraged across many of the groups, or in some cases it takes some heavy lifting to make it dynamic. And in here what you'll find is that those forms can dynamically change both upon the type of audit or the type of control you're looking at, or a user selection. They might just simply check a checkbox like this, and that will automatically display additional fields for the user to roll into. I'll move on here because I know I only have a couple minutes left. I'd like to go into the fieldwork phase and just highlight a couple of other advantages to using SharePoint over some of the off-the-shelf products. What you'll have here is that you can start to see some of the other related items here. So we have our control. That control is linked to multiple tests here, and you can start to have visibility into those tests on the right-hand side. I can drill into any one of those by clicking on the hyperlink or simply go down and look at the tests below. I'm going to actually click into one of these tests, and you saw in that very first screen I had a pie chart of the number of review comments. Nintex has the capability that allows us to build out a repeating control feature. So we can build out one or many review comments for that test. I'm going to add in here, just very arbitrarily, a few more comments, and I'll mark those as complete right away so that we can see those in the report in again, a few moments. The idea here is that you really have a complete flexibility to build out a lot of information on the fly, whether it's review comments or other type of dynamic features on the form that the auditor can have control over. I'll save and close this, and again, we'll come back to that pie chart in just a few moments. The final piece I wanted to highlight is, again, the flexibility of that data model I mentioned before. So with a lot of off-the-shelf products, you're really fixed in terms of you have an issue and you have an action maybe. Well, in this particular case, we're highlighting the fact that you have maybe exceptions or issues. Those issues can be tied to observations. Those observations can be tied to action plans, and you can keep going on as deep or as wide and many-to-many relationships that you want to using SharePoint with simply those link lists that I alluded to before. And again, that lazy approval feature I talked about with the action plan is that if you have a particular action plan that's been assigned to an individual, in particular the business, oftentimes organizations don't want to have to assign access and grant access to end users that are going to go in the tool very infrequently. And by using SharePoint, we have an integration to Active Directory. You can assign the action plan or an information request or a request in general to someone in the business. They will be sent an email from the system, and all they do is respond to that email, either with their text or response or an attachment that you're asking them for, and that information will route itself back into the tool. Again, that's native SharePoint capability with Nintex add-on that offers that extended flexibility for the end users. So a lot of great power to really integrate into the business. One final thing I should have mentioned actually on the test, we've often had success with clients integrating these records into their environment. I talked about continuous control monitoring. If you have a test, for example, that refers to the firewall, you can actually have a KPI coming over from the firewall feeds and updating information about the test on the fly, so the user doesn't have to go out and pull data from third-party systems. So it's a lot of really good integration that you have by using an enterprise platform like SharePoint. The last few minutes here before we get into questions, I did want to go back up to the home page of that audit, and you'll see that the pie chart here now shows I have a number of review comments that are complete. So you have the opportunity to parse through those comments on those individual tests and start to update dashboards and reporting for management to see. That's really the overview we wanted to provide here. Hopefully it was educational to the group and a couple of examples that provided some ideas that you can start to take on internally within your organizations. I'll pause from Julia to see if we have any questions that came up that we didn't address through the demonstration.
Okay, great. For any questions you all have, please put them in the question window in the GoToMeeting toolbar, and we will get to them now. We did have a couple of questions during the presentation regarding the recording and the PowerPoint slides. We will be sending out a message to all the attendees after today's webinar, so you guys have access to those. You can register also for our webinars at ecm.protiviti.com. That answers another question we had. One of the questions we had was, how did they get all the text in the risk name, control description, and risks linked fields to come through on their forms? I thought SharePoint had a limitation of 256 characters for external referenced linked fields.
Great question. So in the list here, thanks James for bringing that up. In the list in here, you'll see we're using Nintex forms, so from a technical perspective, we're using this to bring in all the data. So in the form that we brought in here, all we're doing is we're doing a lookup into those other lists. So we have the risk list, we have the control list, and then we have the linkage list that associates the two together. And so on this page here, you'll see where we're just going in and querying those other lists to bring in the associated information. And in the event that you want to make the association, they'll show up right here. So we really didn't run into any problems with, character limits or anything like that, since I think we're leveraging the Nintex tool here to bring in the data on the Nintex form directly. So hopefully that answers that particular question on how we went about that. And if it doesn't, definitely reach out to us and shoot Julia or James and I an email, and we'd be more than happy to kind of follow up with you.
Great, thank you. What version of SharePoint are you using?
So we've done this on multiple different versions. I'd say you probably at least need 2010, but we've done this in 2010 and 13 and 365 in the cloud.
Okay, great. What challenges do you have with using SharePoint for this?
So I've alluded to one of the challenges. The flexibility of SharePoint can often overwhelm groups, and what we try to do, and hopefully this helped at least start the thought, is that you don't want to go in with an open slate. You want to come in with some concepts and make that decision process more efficient, some ideas that you can leverage. So rather than saying, what do you want your internal audit platform to be like, we start to come in and get some of those decisions based upon questions that we're asking that are very specific. How many phases do you have in your internal audit program? What does your data model look like right now in your internal audit program, or what would it look like if you put it into a system? So we have very pointed questions that we go through to try to drive some efficiency in the planning and configuration phase. I think technically the key area that we're looking to, that we look to make efficient is the fact that you have an extensible data model. Again, that means that the reporting itself can be quite open. And that just requires a little bit more thought in terms of what you want to set up. And so what I mean by that is, once you set up your data model, in this case we have risks and controls and tests and observations and action plans, all of those different objects, you want to be able to report on that information. Well, out-of-the-box tools have that reporting because their data model is fairly fixed, whereas SharePoint, you have to kind of think through that a little bit. And once you have that, certainly, it's easy to build those reports from that using the Power BI and DataZen or Charts.js tools we talked about before.
Okay, great. Where is the data stored? Are we able to access offline?
Yeah, so all the data that is in here is stored directly within the SharePoint lists and libraries. So in the event that you had or wanted to get access to data offline, we're doing a couple things. So we're using Nintex Mobile so that the forms that you see, you have access via Nintex Mobile if you needed to fill out a form offline. Also, the email notification process offline as far as the SharePoint website is concerned. You have the email notifications that you can respond to, and those go back into the SharePoint platform and send that. And then we also have couple other offline capabilities, because one of the things we're also doing is exporting data for a reporting perspective into Excel. And we have Excel wired right up so that data comes in there, and then we can do some pivots and start to build some charts and graphs. Because one of the things that we've run into with almost every implementation we've done is a lot of questions around reporting, because the folks involved in the audit committee or teams have to report up to the audit committee, and where they get their data is through these reports. And so we end up pushing a lot of this into Excel and some other platforms as well, so that you can get access to it offline. But essentially, all of it is stored within SharePoint lists, and if you'd like, you can always sync that up to an offline on source as well. All right.
Nintex does have a capability as well that we're exploring with some organizations within the solution to use. They can pull data from an Excel file automatically, so the user could post an Excel file and the system would parse through it to pull data in if they wanted to do a lot of work offline. But again, the Nintex Mobile has been real helpful for our organizations too.
Okay, great. And does the internal audit module in SharePoint come with all the features that you presented today?
Yep, and I think that's a great question. I think that the key is that Protiviti is not licensing a SharePoint tool built for internal audit out of the box. What we're doing with organizations is building SharePoint with these accelerators. So we built a lot of accelerators to make our implementation efficient, and try to share some of those tricks and tips today with the group. But what we do is go into an organization and talk to them about their internal audit program, see what the right tool is for them, and if it's SharePoint, we bring a lot of these techniques that we've done in the past to make our implementations efficient in terms of the setup of the data models.
Yeah, and the key there, I think, is that we're listening to how each individual internal audit group functions, and we're molding this solution to match their particular needs. So it's not exactly the same cookie cutter from organization to organization, but it's very similar.
Okay, great. That is all the questions we have today. Thank you, James and Terry, for presenting. Lots of great information there. Again, we will be sending out the recording of today's presentation along with the PowerPoint slides to all attendees. Thank you all for attending today. Thank you, James and Terry, again. And we will see you all in 2 weeks. Have a great day.
Thank you.